Bringing you the best day of the week, college football time. The Patriots currently sitting with just 2 wins, getting shut out at home for the second time this season. As has been the case for weeks now, there's nothing better to do really than talk about the future and some of the young blood that's going to be brought into this organization. This show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel and SeatGeek. More about them later. But first, Alex, how are you and what did you think of this week's games real quick?
The championship games are awesome, and it sucks that the Pac-12 is going away, and we'll probably never really have a weekend like that again, and we'll see what happens with the ACC. I wouldn't be so sure the ACC is going to hang on after the committee's decision to leave Florida State out of the college football playoff, but boy, just every game coming down to the wire, all hard-fought games, really a lot of good football. We're obviously going to talk a lot about the Pac-12 championship game between Oregon and Washington. That was probably the best game of the weekend, but I thought, Florida State, Louisville was kind of, those dogs that are like so ugly, they're cute. People say like that's kind of what Louisville, Florida State was. I thought it was, even though it wasn't a close game, it was very fun to watch Texas and watch that offense. And I'm really looking forward to seeing them in a couple of weeks against Washington. And I think that will be an unbelievable game. That's going to be one of the better college football playoff games we've seen, or it should be. So, yeah, I thought we got treated. And then, obviously, the SEC championship was a great game as well. So, I thought we got treated to a great slate and definitely found out a lot about some of these college prospects as well.
Well, you mentioned the Pac-12 championship, RIP, so we're going to talk about it. All right, 2 quarterback prospects that everybody's going to be talking about this offseason. Bo Nix went 21 for 34, 239 yards, 3 touchdowns and an interception. Also had 6 carries for 69 yards. Michael Penix Jr., pretty, ho-hum performance from him, always relatively because we know what he can do.
Yeah.
Michael Penix went 27 for 39, 319 yards, 8.2 average, touchdown and an interception, 87.8 quarterback rating. Really, Dylan Johnson was the story of this game. Guy, 28 carries, 152 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Like that's where awesome. The game was at. Yeah. But what did you think about the performances? We're going to see more, obviously, from Washington. Did Oregon make the playoffs? No, Oregon not make the playoffs.
No, Oregon's not. No, Oregon's out of the playoff. They have a bowl game. I would imagine Bo Nix won't play in that.
So I think we got 2 guys who were in the Heisman race. That was
I'm
doing college football. I'm getting all my ducks in a row. I'm still figuring it out. But honestly, I'm way past where I was this point last year. Thanks to you, my good friend. But yeah, what did these quarterbacks do for their draft stock?
So I thought Penix, I'll start with Penix because it's a little easier. I don't know that he raised or lowered it. I think, like you said, it's kind of the performance we've seen for him. I don't look too much at that low touchdown number. Dylan Johnson cleaned up quite a bit in the red zone. Penix is getting them up and down the field. 6 of their 8 drives out, excluding the 2 at the end of each half to just run out the clock. 6 of their 8 drives ended in points. So he moved the ball well, even if he wasn't the one throwing the ball across the goal line. Did throw a bad pick. He did struggle with pressure a bit, which is something to watch. But I think overall, he made the throws he needed to make. He outdueled another guy we expect to be a first-round pick. He was the better quarterback in this game. You saw that leadership, that fight coming through. The biggest thing for me for him, again, I don't necessarily think he improved his draft stock. He did. It was minimal. I don't think he improved his draft stock in this game, but he allowed himself the opportunity against Texas. And then really what you're looking for if Washington wins that game against either the Alabama or Michigan defenses in the championship, and those are 2, either way, it would be the best defense he's faced all year. He plays well in that game. Like he outduels Quinn Ewers. So boom, he'll have outdueled two of the players in the class, right? And Nix will have outdueled twice. And then Texas Ewers. And then he'll have a chance to potentially outduel McCarthy, but have a chance to beat a really good defense. That's where he's really going to, is he a first-round pick? Is he a top 10 pick? How do we talk about Michael Penix? I think the college football playoff will maybe give us a chance for that. I don't want to give the guy credit for what he hasn't done. I don't think he's a top 10 pick right now. You take the resume he's established to this point, and he goes out and puts up, 303 against Alabama or against Michigan. That's a top 10 pick, assuming his medical's clear. So he's afforded himself much more, and that's going to be a theme here. You'll notice that he's afforded himself much more opportunity down the road, and that was, I think, the biggest thing for him. So the one bad pick aside, I thought he was fine. Again, pretty typical, but it's more the excitement about what are we going to see from him next. That's where I'm at with Michael Penix. with Bo Nix,
and we were texting too. I texted you. I was like, "Road Nix popping up," and then you started to pick it up a little bit.
Yeah, so he had a kind of a roller coaster game. There were flashes where he was good, and it was weird. His strengths didn't show up in this game. His weaknesses were where he played the best. So I don't really know what to make of it. Like, I thought he did a good job attacking the middle of the field in the intermediate and deep parts.
And you talked about that. That was one of the things you wanted to see.
Right. And that throw he made, which ended up being his last play of the game, the touchdown late to make it a 3-point game, the catch and run. That's a great throw. That's a throw that he has not made with any regularity this year. And to make it in that spot is certainly significant. But he was 10 of 16 throwing within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. He was erratic at times. I didn't think he looked great under pressure. So, like, that was kind of a draw because it was like, all right, he did some stuff I wanted to see him do that he hadn't been doing, but the things that you're going to kind of hang your hat on with him weren't there. What really bothered me about Nix's performance, and I know some people are going to say this is nitpicking, but this is the way it's going to be looked at by NFL evaluators. He throws that touchdown pass, the catch and run, to make it a 3-point game, 34-31 with, I think it was like 2.5 minutes to go. And Oregon kicks the ball back off to Washington with 3 timeouts. It is a 3-point game. Oregon's defense needs to stop. Nix will get the ball back, go down the field, have a chance to at least tie the game with a field goal. Same spot he was in the regular season meeting back in October. Boom, redemption shot. That's what you're looking for. When they go back to the sideline, though, the Oregon offense, and Taylor, I think you saw this. I think I texted you about this. He's on the bench, slumped over, towel over his head, not watching. And there's players coming up to him, trying to hype him up, and he was disengaged. And look, was Oregon going to win the game at that point? Probably not. But there was a real chance they were going to get the ball back. And you got to be ready to go, dude. Like, you need to snap in. And he's supposed to be like, over 60 career college starts. He's supposed to be this veteran leader, poised, composed, experienced. I didn't like that. And there's a couple things people will say to come back from that. One, people will say that's ridiculous. I would say we did this with Caleb Williams for months, and we're going to continue to do it for months with Caleb Williams. And it's a fair critique of Caleb Williams as well. Yeah. Both of them. The body language in big spots in big games, concerning. People will say, well, Michael Penix put his head in the equipment box last week in the Apple Cup. I personally make a difference between, like, Penix's job was done. He got him down the field in a field goal range in a tie game. They're going to kick it. They're either going to go overtime or the game is going to be over.
Some guys just don't like watching the end of games like that. That's pretty common. Yeah.
There's lots of players and coaches that don't watch game-winning field goals. Me personally, I would watch it. I have no problem if he stayed in there like during the coin toss. Let's say he misses the kick and Penix stays in there as they're going to overtime in the coin toss. I'd have a problem with it. But no, he didn't. He didn't want to watch the game-winning field goal. He's a guy who wears his emotions on his sleeve. We've seen that. But I think he's a team-first guy. I don't think he's a guy that's going to bow out. He's not a guy. The game's not over with him. And they haven't lost any games this year. But going back to his time in Indiana, that guy plays till there's zeros on the clock. Bo Nix, again, you got a chance to win the game, and he taps out. So I'm not saying he's like not a first-round pick anymore because of that. But I would bet when he goes in interviews with NFL teams, they're going to pull that clip up, and ESPN certainly showed it. Now they barely see the drive. They were just showing Bo Nix. And look, credit to Nix. He got up after he shook Penix's hand, all of that. When he goes into meetings with teams, they're going to pull that clip up and say, what was going through your mind here? What were your teammates saying to you? What were you saying to them? That is something he is going to have to answer for. That's just a part of the process. I'm going to guess teams, when they go back and look at that, are going to say, well, we could be in this situation. We don't want our quarterback on the bench with a towel over his head. We want him standing on the sideline or either talking to coaches getting ready or on the sideline, like hyping up the defense. So it wasn't a great look for him. And the reason I think with him, it hits so hard is, again, this is supposed to be a big part of who he is. He's supposed to be this veteran leader, and he didn't show that in a moment where he really needed to show it, and it was striking. The reason I'm talking so much about it is because I didn't expect it from Bo Nix. Right. There are guys I might expect that from. I did not expect it from Bo Nix, and that's why it struck me so much.
And even the feeling with Caleb Williams, like that was after the game. I would understand as like a coach if you go up to him and you're like, you have to understand that you were a quarterback. Like at the time, it kind of pissed me off that people were getting on him about that kind of thing. And knee-jerk reaction, I think that's fair. But then you think like it is a business and quarterbacks are perceived a certain way. I think, and like really when I thought about if you go to like a New York or a New England, and the way that people are going to react, like you're going to have to deal with that because of what you did. So I understand a coach being like, you got to understand, like if you like be with your family, that's completely fine. Be emotional. Don't do it publicly because that's just going to draw attention that you don't want. It's very, very different when the game is going on. And again, it's not a Penix thing where it's like, people look down and not wanting to see the extra point is a common thing. But it's odd when you're still like competing in the game. And he was by himself too. It was a really weird look. And again, I'm Mr. Like I try to give guys a benefit of the doubt when it comes to like body language and whatnot. But like you said, it was striking in when ESPN is focusing on you, like you said, over the drive. That's the effect that it has. And that's something you have to answer for. In the NFL, like we've seen all year, when teams are doing poorly, people start to pick on little things that they see. And if you're Bo Nix starting quarterback on the sideline, everyone's going to have to answer for you. And do you want to be the guy that's bringing that on your locker room? It sucks that we have to talk about that, but this is a major business. And that's just kind of that's the trick of the trade.
Right. If that happened here, right? And let's say they get the stop and then get the ball back and they lose. There's going to be, guys are going to be getting questions. Do you wish you had Bo Nix with you in the huddle when the defense was going to figure something out?
Yep.
What were you saying to him? Because what really did it for me was one of the linemen goes up to him and is like clapping and like, hey, come on, let's go. And Nix didn't move. Like at that point, it's like, hey, they're like looking for you, man. Like, let's go. So I don't want to pick on the kid too much, and we probably have, but
it's fair because the reasons
it stood out.
Yeah,
it stood out, and I think it's something he's going to be asked about.
Yep. We're going to move on, but first, quick word from our friends at FanDuel. We'll be back.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action, NFL. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including you got spreads, you got your player props, you got over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, Quinn Ewers. This is an interesting one because apparently he's supposed to be potentially staying in school. We've talked about it. That might not be the best course of action for him. I'll let you get into that. But first, against the Oklahoma State Cowboys, this is another blowout for Texas, won 49-21. Quinn Ewers went 35 for 46, 452 yards for a 9.8 yards per attempt average, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Also had 3 carries for 6 yards. No one cares about those, though. So, again, same question as last time. What do you think this did for his draft stock? And will that even matter? Because is he going to be in the draft?
So kind of like with Michael Penix, the bigger thing, Oklahoma State's defense isn't good. The bigger thing for me is Quinn Ewers gave himself a chance here to continue to prove himself. And I think with him, it's can he get back to being a first-round pick? He was supposed to be coming into the season. It was up and down season. I think if he's a first-round pick, there's not much reason for him to stay in school because he's going to be a first-round pick next year. You might as well. If he starts hearing from teams that he's a second or third-round pick, he's going to go back to school, try to get his stock back up. So having more chances now to raise his stock is good. As for this performance, and by the way, he was the only player when I did, and you can check it out on 98.5thesportshub.com. I did stock up, down, or even for the 6 big quarterbacks that we kind of talked about championship weekend. He was the only one I had up. So I thought he had the best weekend relatively of any of them. And of course he did. You read the numbers. He set the Big 12 champion, the Big 12 notorious offensive conference. Like it's all air raid, let it fly, let it rip, totals in the 70s and 80s, yada, yada, yada. He set the conference championship game passing yards record early in the third quarter. I mean, the numbers are mind-blowing. And he had some fantastic moments in this game. I thought he showed great pocket awareness, elusiveness, ability to move around within the pocket, extend plays, which is going to be big for a guy his size. He needs to show he can take care of himself in the pocket. He did a great job of that. I thought again, that intermediate part of the field that's becoming so big in the modern NFL. He was 8 of 9 for 133 yards, throwing from between 10 and 19 yards. Those are the kind of throws that are going to, when they, the cut-ups, right? And Taylor, I know you do this with your film, like you know, intermediate. When they open that intermediate throws file from the Big 12 championship, they're going to love what they see from Quinn Ewers in this game. I think he checked a ton of boxes. And again, I'm going to read the numbers again before I say this, just so we're all on the same page. 35 of 46, 452 yards, 4 touchdowns. I felt like he left some plays on the field. I really did. I think he could have been better. The interception was bad. There's a linebacker lurking underneath the crosser.
Didn't even see him.
Totally missed the guy. Like, that can't happen. He had a couple other throws. He overthrew A.D. Mitchell deep when he had like clean beat the corner and was running by him. He had another miss on a crosser. Through most of that, and look, they kind of took their foot off the gas in the second half, and I get that. But even in the first half, I thought he had some missed throws. The biggest thing for me, which is going to be sorted out in this game, like I said, he made some nice throws. He got a ton of help from his receivers. Texas averaged 9.5 yards after the catch in that game. So
a first down. If you catch the ball, boom, you're already past the sticks.
Right, exactly. So Quinn Ewers' A-dot was about 5. It was low. So he did make some big-time throws. He got a ton of help. They also had one of his deeper passes to Jadavian Sanders for the touchdown, the tight end. That was off a flea flicker. Sanders is wide-ass open. He's the only player in the camera shot. So, like, I don't want to take anything away from Quinn Ewers. Again, I think he was really good. I also think he could have been better. And I think he missed some opportunities in that game. So, stocks up. We'll see what he does against Washington, which is a better defense. And then if he wins that game, a better defense again against Michigan or Alabama. I still think he certainly has a chance to be in the first-round conversation. But my biggest takeaway from this game, Taylor, I don't know that I need the Patriots to get Quinn Ewers. I need the Patriots to get one of these Texas skill position players. I really do. I think
Xavier Worthy. I feel like you've been talking about him quite a bit.
So yeah, he stood out to me since he was a 5-star freshman. He's not some sleeper came out of nowhere. He's always been highly regarded, but he's torn up Alabama twice. How many guys can you say that about? He's been good all year this year. My comp for him, and get ready here, tall Zay Flowers. That's really what he looks like. Like if Zay Flowers was like 6'1". So he has that quickness, the agility, the route running ability, the straight line speed. And he's probably going to be a second-round pick. That's how good this wide receiver is.
Man, you're getting me excited.
A.D. Mitchell, to me, is like prime, like good Devontae Parker. Like Devontae Parker against Stephon Gilmore, that one. Like that's the kind of player I think he can be. I don't really have a comp for Jadavian Sanders. He's a really good tight end. He's like 6'5", 250. He blocks. He catches the ball. He runs physically. Like he's a good
Hunter Henry?
Sorry?
Was he good Hunter Henry?
Yeah, you could say that. Oh, no, because he blocks. He's a more physical. He's like a well-rounded tight end. So they're all probably going to go somewhere between like 30 and 50, something like that. So we'll see. I could see if he's going to run some absurd 40, and maybe he ends up in the 20s. But it's that skill, and I don't want to. It's tough because when you talk about a lot of these quarterbacks, when you talk about Penix, when you talk about Ewers, when you talk about even Williams or Nix, the people who don't like them have this built-in, oh, well, look at all the talent around him. And, we don't want another thing with Mac where he was just a product of the talent around him at Alabama. That's
trauma talking.
So here's what I'll say. One, no quarterback has the talent Mac has. No quarterback outside of maybe Joe Burrow in 19 has ever had the talent Mac had at Alabama. That's one of the greatest college football teams of all time. The other thing I would say is Quinn Ewers is not Quinn Ewers. Caleb Williams is throwing to 3 top 150 picks. Some of them are underclassmen, so they won't be top 150 in this draft. But when they get drafted, they will eventually be top 150. Jayden Daniels is throwing to 2 top, 2 second round, 2 top, call it 50, 60 picks in Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. We know Michael Penix is 3 guys that will go in the top 50. Troy Franklin's a top 50 pick. I forget the name of their other guy at Oregon. He's going to go top 100. JJ McCarthy is Roman Wilson, who's a top 100 pick. He has one of the best tight ends in the class of 2025. He's not eligible this year. And he has arguably the 2 best running backs in college football behind him in Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards in an offense that doesn't ask him to do jack. We just talked about the group Quinn Ewers had. If you don't want to take a quarterback in this draft because he has too much talent around him, you either are taking Drake Maye, who still does have Tez Walker and Amarian Hampson. Like, he has talent. It's not the same level, but you're never going to see, because of the transfer portal, you will never see again the team Cam Newton had at Auburn in 2010, where he's throwing a Lutzenkirchen, right? None of the guys Cam Newton played with at Auburn offensively, nobody who caught a pass from Cam Newton at Auburn ever played in the NFL. And that's why that season's so impressive.
And no one he played with in the NFL ever played in the NFL either. It's incredible, except for Greg Olsen.
You'll never see that again because of the NIL and the transfer portal. They're building super teams. So either if that's your take, that you can't get somebody who had too much of a supporting cast, you're either locked into saying Drake Maye is the best quarterback in the draft, or you don't want a quarterback. The reality is, it's going to be a tough year to evaluate these guys. You have to look at what the quarterback does independently of the result. How does his pocket presence? How does he move in the pocket? Does he have a compact release? Where is he putting the ball? Forget if maybe these receivers are making good catches, but are they making good catches because the ball's inaccurate, or is he putting the ball in a spot where only the receiver can get it and they're just making a good play? The other part is, ideally, you draft a guy, you want talent around him in the NFL as well. Let's just not assume that the guy drafted by the Patriots is going to have no talent. Hopefully they go out and they get some wide receivers too. So to bring it back to Quinn Ewers, I do think he had a very good game. I think he improved his draft stock. I think if he continues to play this way throughout the college football playoff, he will be a first-round pick. He will end up declaring for the draft, all of that. He can't help that he's throwing to 3 guys that are potential all-pros. You got to look at what he does outside of that, but they are certainly helping him out quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the argument, I understand it to a degree, because you want to see a college quarterback elevate their supporting cast, because that's the name of the game in the NFL. But at the same time, I think you made a great point. It's not like a Mac Jones situation where he had all this talent around him, but it's not like he's underthrowing every pass and guys are coming back. Like, you can see the quality of play where it's like this guy is maximizing his talent around him, and this guy is succeeding only because the people around him are doing that. Like, yeah, I think it's fair to say that Mac, a lot of the success he had at Alabama came on screens, short throws, because he had so many explosive guys. So you just get the ball behind line of scrimmage and you can turn it into explosive play. But also when you saw him throw downfield, it's like, oh no, when he actually trusts the guys he's throwing to, when he has protection, this guy can look really good and he can operate with an NFL quality roster. Like, there is some value in that as well. And not just having a Drake Maye, where they have, again, he has Tez Watkins, and I'm not going to make it seem like he doesn't have any NFL talent around him. But when you have a lack, sometimes that turns into bad habits. Sometimes that turns into, I don't trust my guys to win or be able to do certain things because they aren't at that certain talent level. And then it's okay, you take a step back and have to have another conversation, where it's when Drake Maye is making the Mac Jones-esque plays, where he's going outside of structure, but it kind of scares you, and you're like, all right, you have the athleticism to pull this off, but should you be doing it on a regular basis to try to play Superman? That turns into a whole different thing. So I understand some of the validity of, wanting to critique a guy because he's got a lot of talent around him. But if anything, it just gives you more of a clear picture, as opposed to being like, why is this guy, doing all the Superman stuff when obviously he's just trying to make something happen.
Right. Yeah, no, it's all a very good point. So it's something, and I'm sure this won't be the last time we bring this up, Taylor, as we go through the process, that you just gotta look at what the quarterback does. And if there's an All-American on the other side of it, if there's a walk-on freshman on the other side of it, you got to just kind of block that out.
Also, just support your young receivers. It's almost like a good offense should have 2 NFL caliber receivers. Crazy, right?
You would think it might be a good idea. Yeah. Generational football mind over here, Taylor Kyles.
That's what they pay me the big bucks for. All right. They do not. All right. All right. Next, we've got Carson Beck versus Jayden Milroe. Georgia versus the Crimson Tide. The game that got Georgia booted out, most likely, of the college football playoffs, despite Kirby's best efforts to try to get him in there. Carson Beck went 21 for 29, 243 yards, no touchdowns, but no interceptions, 84.3 rating. Jayden Milroe, 13 for 23, 192 yards, but 2 passing touchdowns. And obviously, he's going to run the ball, but only 14 carries for 29 yards. Nothing too crazy there. What did you see from Carson Beck and Jayden Milroe? Do we have any kind of update on him, or is Jayden Milroe still Jayden Milroe, where you like that he's starting to progress and you like that he's, rising to the occasion in these moments, but there's still plenty to work on?
Milroe, I still think the best course of action for him is to go back to school. And, they had a quarterback competition this year, even though he was the week 1 starter. He'll go back. They will truly build the offense around him, game plan it around him. He, as much as he's grown this year, and he deserves a ton of credit for that, he still has more growth he'll need as a quarterback. Like, he needs to go back to school and potentially be like the Jayden Daniels of the next class, right? That guy that just kind of hits that next gear and flies up the draft board. So I will say he did make a nice throw, the touchdown throw, Jermaine Burton. Jermaine Burton's a name Patriots fans should know. Early day 3 wide receiver, just a really well-rounded, experienced. He doesn't have like one standout trait, but I don't think he has any really weaknesses as a receiver either. He's just kind of solid, and they probably need more than one receiver. So I'm not saying Jermaine Burton's the answer, but you take a wide receiver in the 2nd round, maybe get Jermaine Burton in the 5th, and you just kind of have him there as another option.
And I'm guessing he has experience with Bill O'Brien as well. Sorry.
Yes, he does, because he was there last year. Yeah, and he was also at Georgia, so he's been in big games. He's played at big programs. He transferred from Georgia to Alabama last year. On Beck, I think you pretty much saw the Carson Beck you've seen all year. He was efficient, but he wasn't. He made the plays he needed to make. He didn't really go beyond that. Didn't. The whole second half, you're kind of waiting for Georgia to have a drive, and it was a game where against a good defense, you're putting it on the quarterback. And in this game, again, for Beck I think we kind of knew we kind of know who he is at this point. It was, is there another level he can reach in this big game that he can solidify himself? He's kind of fringe day 2 prospect right now, probably more early day 3. And it was like, okay, can he show me something against Alabama where, all right, if he was who he was all year and then maxes out against Alabama, you're going to be really encouraged. You were waiting for him to have that moment the whole second half, and he just couldn't crack the Alabama defense. Now, the Alabama defense is good, but so are NFL defenses. And he, to me, looked like a guy that could probably use another year. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, because you figure Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers both going to the draft, and what are his weapons going to look like? Not like it's Georgia. I'm sure they'll have good players, but will they be as good as specifically Brock Bowers? It's hard to imagine. But I think at this point he has another year of eligibility. Carson Beck does, and I think it's instead of having that one game, right, and then the college football playoff, if they won, Georgia would have been in. Instead of having that one game and then the college football playoff to prove he's a first-round pick, he'll have a whole season. And no matter what, he'll get to face Alabama next year. Georgia and Alabama play in the regular season, so he'll get a good redemption shot there. It seems like things are trending towards him going back to school. That's what the reporting indicates. Georgia's getting a nice fat NIL deal set for him. The backup, like Brock Vandergraff, just transferred out. I think he's going to Mississippi State. I don't remember. I saw that earlier, but it's all setting up for Carson Beck to go back to school. I would imagine, I don't know what his personal situation is, but from a draft perspective, I think in an NFL career perspective, going back to school is probably the right move for him at this point.
All right, short and sweet. These are two guys who may not even be in the draft conversation, so we'll keep it moving. But first, quick word from our pals at SeatGeek. We'll be back.
I've been looking for the best deal on Celtics tickets, and with over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events every single day on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports festivals, and more. With the NFL, NBA, and NHL seasons in full swing, you don't want to miss out. SeatGeek has your tickets to every game. Plus, artists like Travis Scott are on tour. They put all the tickets across the web in one place to make sure you're getting a good deal. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so look for the green dots. Green means good and red means bad. Every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee, and SeatGeek is the only site that lets you return your tickets ahead of the event with swaps. So as you know, I always come through for you guys. You can use my code DREAMERSPRO for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. That's $20 off your first purchase with promo code DREAMERSPRO. Make sure you check the link in the description to download the app.
All right, now we're talking about Michael Pratt. Tulane took on SMU. Not a great day for Pratt. Tulane lost 26-14. Pratt went 21 for 36, 238 yards for 6.6 yard average, a touchdown, an interception, 16.8 QBR. Not great. What did you think of the performance? Was there something hidden in the stats from the game that, maybe makes him look a little better, or was it as pedestrian as it looked?
Nah, he looked overwhelmed. He did. And I wonder now if he plays in the bowl game. kind of like with Beck, he was that fringe top 100 prospect. And is he going to be that end of day 2 guy and I know these names aren't, the most exciting to fans, but was he going to be that Davis Mills, Kyle Trask kind of prospect? And he kind of fell back to the pack. Maybe plays in the bowl game, rights the ship, but not the performance I was looking for from him.
Oh, that's boring. All right, another short, sweet one. But now we will move on to the bigger names in this college draft class. Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, and Jayden Daniels. My man, Jayden Daniels. Not going to see these guys, unfortunately. But we got some guys in the Heisman conversation. So chapter's pretty much closed on their seasons. We're not really going to learn much more about them. So what do you think? Final analysis based on what we've seen so far. We still have to go through all the tape, all that, blah, 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 caveats. But what did you think of the seasons they put together?
So I think with Caleb Williams, it was compared to expectations, it was disappointing. He was the reigning Heisman winner. USC was coming in with all this talent. He was supposed to compete for national championship. Now, the main reason USC didn't compete for national championship was their defense. 128th, 133rd in the nation. They were ass. Just technical term, ass defense. They were bad. Yes, that's right. That's not Caleb Williams' fault at all. He scored the points. He put up the numbers. Did have 10 fewer touchdowns than last year. Threw as many interceptions in 2 less games. I think it's one thing to be a true sophomore transfer who probably wasn't that, people knew Caleb Williams was good, but he was not a Heisman, not in the Heisman contention at the start of last year. For him to have the season he had, it was kind of going to be all up because the expectations really weren't that enormous. Whereas this year, they were talking about him being generational, and he was very, 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 very good, but he didn't hit those expectations. I still think as we get ready for what I call the true pre-draft process, which is the games are the games, the season is the season. Right now, we'll start doing the Senior Bowl, the Combine, pro days, interviews, meetings, all of that. That's the pre-draft process. As we go into the process, he is still the best quarterback in this draft. I do truly believe that. I think he showed a lot of talent. I think the flaws he showed last year, or the flaws he showed this past season, were also apparent last year. We just weren't focused on them because we were so wowed by what he was doing. Once we became accustomed to him doing some of that Patrick Mahomes stuff, you dig a little deeper. Yeah, he gets a little flustered in the pocket. He doesn't always set his feet, things like that. They're all coachable issues. No prospect is perfect. I say that all the time.
Yep.
I would rather try to fix what Caleb Williams needs fixed than what any other quarterback in this draft needs fixed, or some of them have things that simply can't be fixed, right? Michael Penix injuries, right? We'll get to Jayden. But if he hurt his stock to me, it's because he opened the door for Marvin Harrison Jr. to go 1-1, which I still don't think will happen. I think even if the Bears were going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. 1-1, they would sell that pick and then use whatever they get back for that, +3 to move up to 2 and take Harrison. I still think Caleb Williams ultimately goes 1-1. I just think this year the shine was off. He was a known commodity, and it was easier to dig a little bit deeper. So still love him as a player. Definitely. There's things he needs to work on. I felt that way before the season. I still feel that way. I just think those things were emphasized a little more in this year than they were last year.
And how about Maye?
Maye's an interesting one. So I was never, and I know this is going to sound crazy to some people, I remember Drake Maye last year when he came out broke out as a freshman, being like, are we really doing this with Drake Maye? And then he started doing stuff I didn't think he could do. And he really impressed the second half of last year and the beginning of this season. And then he played a run of kind of bad teams and piled up the numbers. And look, I'm not going to fault the guy for beating bad teams. You need to do that. And it's impressive. He did not end the season on a high note. He had some bad losses. He got loose with the football. I still can't unsee, to your point, that he does a lot of the things Mac Jones does. They just work. And
it's scary.
to work in the ACC, which was a bad conference this year. And he didn't really play any of the best ACC teams. He played Duke. That's pretty much it. And Clemson. He didn't play well against. He has tremendous physical tools. And for that, he is still an elite quarterback prospect. The size, the arm strength, the athletic ability, the speed. That's all there. But he also needs to be able to play quarterback. So, okay, bring up the comment. Gives Mitch Trubisky vibes. I get that. And Sam Howell as well. He's much more physically gifted than Trubisky and Howell were. But I think the concerns are the same. Those two guys did not play a lot of college football. And they came in very raw, and you were essentially buying potential. You weren't really buying on anything tangible with them. I think the hope this year was Maye had so much natural ability that he would give you something tangible from a football skill set to kind of lock in that pick. He kind of did. And there are people who will see what they want to see, and I understand it. But how does some of that circus stuff transfer from the ACC to the NFL? If he can still get away with it, and I'm not saying he can't. If he can transfer that to the NFL, yeah, he's worth a second overall pick. The Justin Herbert comp is spot on. He'll be excellent. But will it transfer? Last point on it. He needs to go to the Senior Bowl. If he shows up and has a big week at the Senior Bowl, it's like, all right, he did it against elite talent. We're good. We move on. If he goes to the Senior Bowl and struggles, there's going to be serious questions about him. If he doesn't go to the Senior Bowl, I'm going to look at that and say, he's worried about struggling. That's a red flag. I need to see Drake Maye go and have a good week at the Senior Bowl. If he does that, yeah, he's QB2 locked in, but he did leave the door open.
Now, the Justin Herbert comp.
Yeah.
Maybe my memory is foggy on Herbert. I don't remember part of his scouting report being like Maye's, where he goes outside of structure so often or to the degree that it really worries you. I felt like it was more that like things are so simple. Can he mentally, adapt to the NFL? And I know there were questions about his demeanor because obviously he's a guy who hates attention and avoids it, like actively avoids attention, despite the fact that people put him on him in negative ways that make absolutely no sense. I'm looking at you, Acho, you weirdo. But that's Herbert. But with Maye, I feel like the physical talents here, like you see the incredible arm strength, you see the easy athleticism. But then I also see where Herbert isn't a guy like a Josh Allen or like a younger Mahomes where he relies on his athleticism. With Herbert, it's more like every once in a while he'll have a crazy run where you're like, right, this guy is 6'5". Like he's a massive and he is fast. Whereas with Maye, I started to kind of watch him a little bit more. And I realized sometimes this guy is trying to run away from pressure and it works, but not oftentimes, but there's more times than I expected where it doesn't. And when you're in college and you're trying to escape pass rushers and you can't on any kind of consistent basis, but you're someone who tries to use your athleticism, that's like, okay, at the NFL, people are only going to get faster. So obviously it's like a Caleb Williams situation where like you can coach that out of him, but is it really quite the same? Because I've seen so many Justin Herbert comps. I feel like you look at them, it's like tall white kid who's pretty athletic and, can throw a pretty ball. I feel like that's where a lot of it comes from, but I also feel like the things that scare you are more prominent with Maye than they were for Herbert, because with Herbert, it was more mental. Well, I guess both are technically mental, but it was more, can he catch up rather than can he kind of pull back on some of the stuff that worries you?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's more you're talking about the ceiling, but you're right. The differences, what you're worried about in the draft coming out are different with the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, last one. My boy, Jayden Daniels, give me your thoughts. Is he the Heisman winner? Is he maybe going first overall? I mean, I kind of say that jokingly, but honestly, every week I feel like the people who, like, again, I'm not super locked into college football, so I try to listen to the people who are and come out with all the stuff that I consume during that time of the year. They're all raving about Jayden. It's all like he's super explosive. He's growth. It's all the things that we've already talked about on this show. But it feels like he has fewer concerns. Like we talked about, he, isn't really smart with his body. But that seems to be the biggest thing where it's like, okay, well, if you coach that out of him, there's a lot that you like. And not nearly, outside of that, as many of the concerns over, like, can he play the quarterback position on schedule in a way where you don't have to give him the Andy Reid treatment where it's like first 2.5 seconds, mine. If it breaks down, do your Superman thing. So what are your thoughts there?
So first off, he should win the Heisman. Absolutely. He would get my vote. As for the draft, I think there is an element with him. We just talked about this with Caleb Williams, right? Where last year he was new. He just exploded on the scene and we were all gushing and we weren't necessarily looking for the flaws because we were just having fun watching him. I do think there probably is some of that with Jayden Daniels. I think his evaluation will come a little bit back down when people really start digging in. But here's the thing. I don't think he can go number one overall because I think all the things that he does well, all the things that you're going to hallmark him for as a prospect are also things Caleb Williams does slightly better. So if that's the skill set you're looking for, like Jayden Daniels, to me, and this isn't perfect, there are some key differences, but big picture, stylistically, Jayden Daniels is just like Caleb Williams minus 10%. So
yeah, that's fair.
But
then there's that in that 10%, it's like, well, how much do you care about, being able to have to coach things out of him?
And that's
the
true.
part where it's like, that's
I just think,
yeah.
Well, the other thing is Caleb Williams has now 2 years of very high production, and Jayden Daniels was good last year, but like teams do it, and it makes sense. If you have two guys who look like the same player, but one guy had high level production for 2 years and one guy had high level production for 1 year, you're probably going to take the guy who did it for 2 years because you have the larger sample size, and that's what you want. Jayden Daniels has a large sample size, a 5-year starter going back to Arizona State, but he's not nearly the player he was now that he was as a freshman. His game has grown tremendously. So I don't think he can catch Williams. I do think he can catch Maye if he has a great, pre-draft process. I'm not closing the door that he gets to QB2. I think with Daniels, the first thing I point to with him is the growth and just how much better he got, not just from last year to this year, but over the course of this year, because you need a guy who's going to come in, especially a guy like Daniels, who's an older prospect. That's another reason I think, Caleb Williams has an edge on him, which just isn't going to change. He's always going to be, Williams will always be younger. You need a guy that's going to learn quick and that's going to develop quick. And Jayden Daniels has already shown he can do that. So that, to me, people will roll their eyes at that. I don't care about that. How does he throw the ball? You got to learn when you come into the NFL.
Right.
You got to learn. There's things you have to learn. And Jayden Daniels has shown he can be a quick learner. So that's exciting, especially when it comes to deep ball. It was one of his biggest weaknesses at Arizona State. Now it's one of his biggest strengths. You love that. Obviously, his ability as a runner is fantastic. He showcased that throughout the year. Right now, my biggest knocks on him, he's going to have to put on weight. 6'4", 210, can't play quarterback in the NFL at that size, especially if you're going to be running around. He's got to put on 10 to 15 pounds. And then can he's going to be a little bit slower, but can he still be as dynamic when he puts on a little weight? Robert Griffin III, and that's been my comp for him this whole time for Jayden Daniels. Robert Griffin III put on 10 pounds between college and the pros, and he was until Washington made him tear his knee up for a wild card game.
In that field, that disgusting, awful field. Jesus, man. Sorry.
Hopefully Jayden Daniels' team cares more about his long-term health than Washington did for RG3, certainly. Yeah. If Daniels somehow goes to Commanders, I might cry. He's got to bulk up a little bit. That's certainly a thing. His age there's nothing you can do about that. He's an older prospect. Some teams like that, but I think a lot of teams, they want the younger guy. They want the guy that, they can get. How are you going to, there's a big difference between being 26 and being 29 when your rookie contract runs out.
And with Drake Maye, that is an edge he has. He's
Drake
22 years old, right? Like that's a lot more time that you have to, like when you talk about all the time you got to make up. Well, by the time he's Jayden Daniels' age, he'll have been in the NFL for multiple years.
Right, exactly.
Then you're hoping like, all right, well, he's the same age as this guy, and he actually has NFL experience, and that can go one of two ways. It's either, it could go several ways, but the extremes are this guy figured it out, and now he's playing up to his potential versus, the Mac Jones route where he didn't have enough support and he lost confidence. And now you've got like a 25-year-old with a ton of talent, but mentally he's fried.
The other thing with Jayden Daniels for me, and this is also coachable, is I think he reads the field well. Like he can pick apart when he figures out what the coverage is, he knows how to pick apart a zone or take advantage of man coverage. He needs to see some more complex coverage and get used to that. I almost feel like he trusts his eyes too much, if that makes sense. Like he makes and this is a thing for a lot of young quarterbacks. This isn't just a Jayden Daniels thing, but when you're talking about a guy being a potential top 10 pick, we're going to nitpick. He makes the read, and when he makes the right read, which he does most of the time, he can pick it apart. He's not great when his initial read isn't the right read of then adjusting and coming back. Right.
You mean Tua?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Tua's a very good example of this. Yes. And that's certainly coachable. And that goes back to my first point of he's a really quick learner, and he's not exposed necessarily to a ton of those coverages in college. So it's not something he has a chance to work on a ton. He'll have it in the NFL. there's going to be growing pains with that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's not, but it is something that when he comes in the league, it's going to come out. People are going to see it on tape, and it's going to be something he needs to work on. So, but those are all, again, protecting himself, coachable thing. You'll get him on a weight plan. You'll get him watching film of NFL defenses instead of college defenses. They're all coachable. I do think he is in the conversation for a top 10 pick. And could he pass Maye by the time we're all said and done? I do believe he could, yes.
And we talk every week about, is Belichick going to be gone? Should Belichick be gone? Should they clean house? All that. Roster building perspective, I don't think there's a whole lot of, gray area there. Something needs to change because it has not been acceptable for several years. But we can't pretend like Bill Belichick isn't also the smartest person, one of the smartest people who's ever been in the game of football, probably the smartest person who's ever been currently just because of experience and success. And Brady always talks about it, how they would, have their meetings every week and they would talk about, this is what I'm seeing. What are you comfortable with? This is what you do. And he always talks about how I learned through Bill Belichick's perspective how defenses run. And then Belichick says, conversely, that Brady taught him a lot because it was a quarterback's perspective for someone who's actually on the field. I tell you, man, I would love for Jayden Daniels to get to learn from Bill O'Brien and Bill Belichick and have that as his first couple of seasons in the league of learning from guys who Bill O'Brien, I feel like, does a phenomenal job just from watching his clinics of making the game simple. And giving, that's the whole thing. He gives quarterbacks options. We're not looking at Mac Jones's interception numbers and being like, Bill O'Brien, what are you doing? He has nowhere to throw. That's not really, sometimes because of separation. But, the turnover issues this year have been largely because Mac Jones is making poor decisions. But Bill O'Brien's offense is really, really, also so many complications. Because of Mac Jones in the system, I feel like there's a lot of pre-snap stuff. But again, dumb that down with the rookie quarterback, play to their strengths. I would love to see what those guys could do with a smart guy who's self-aware like Jayden Daniels.
Can I give you a counter to that? Put Jayden Daniels in Bobby Slowick's offense.
Dude, of course. Yeah.
That's what I want to see. That it's nothing against Bill O'Brien, but I'd rather get, pair the coach and quarterback versus, because I don't want Jayden Daniels out here just throwing a bunch of slants and in cuts and screens. I want him throwing the ball down the field, right? So I'm not saying you're wrong. I think that teaching wise, obviously O'Brien and Belichick would be, and you mentioned the point of Belichick in those Tuesday meetings with Brady. I think something like that would be incredibly beneficial. For any young quarterback, but Daniels, like I said, picking up the coverages. But I also want to see modern offense, right?
No, that's totally valid. That's 100%
and just
valid.
stylistically, I think that's
Johnson more. If they can get Brian Johnson or Bob. Wait, did I say his name right? I keep saying the wrong
Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson.
I don't know why I keep calling him Brian Johnson. I don't know what is going on in my head, but thank you, Ben
Former
Johnson.
Red Sox relief pitcher Brian Johnson.
That's definitely, me, big baseball guy. That's got to be what it is. All right, thank you so much, buddy. Favorite time of the week. Had a blast, as always. Let the people know what you got coming out and what they need to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, 985sportshub.com. I kind of have more of a recap on the college quarterbacks. I realized we didn't get to JJ McCarthy. I think I forgot to text you about him. It was another JJ McCarthy.
Go ahead.
It's very easy to talk about JJ McCarthy. He didn't really do anything. The heavy majority of his passes, I think it was 80-something% of his passes were at or behind the line of scrimmage. He was in the passenger seat as Michigan rolled Iowa. We'll see when we're really going to find out about JJ McCarthy. You cannot hide your quarterback against Alabama. You can hide him against Penn State. You can hide him against Ohio State. You can hide him against Iowa. JJ McCarthy's going to have nowhere to run literally and figuratively when Nick Saban gets his hands on him. So we'll get a really good idea where JJ McCarthy's at in a couple of weeks. But I have a breakdown of all those guys on 985thesportshub.com. Me and Evan talked a little bit about the quarterbacks this morning on the Catch 22 podcast on Patriots.com. And make sure you follow me on Twitter at RealAlexBarth because I will have not only Patriots coverage tomorrow, but Saturday, Army Navy at Gillette Stadium. Very excited for that one. Really no draft implications, but I think one of the best football traditions every year. If you're a fan of the sport, the game is the sport at its core. So I'll be geeking out on that all day, and I'll bring you guys all along for the ride.
Yeah, Gillette's been decked out. Even in the tunnels, you see all this stuff painted on the walls. You got the thing outside. It's been really cool. Next year I gotta make sure I make it. I just didn't understand the gravity, but I'm gonna be covering or following you to see your coverage and make sure I'm locked in. Thank you again, my friend. Thank you all for tuning in. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. we will see you next time.